Hello lovelies, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma. If this is your first time seeing this channel, you're very much welcome. And to all my returning subscribers, thank you so much for stopping by again. In this video today, I'll be sharing how I made this loose fit short without a waistband. So if this is something you're interested in, without wasting much time, let's get right into the tutorial. So I have my fabric here on a fold. This is ankara print and you'll be needing about 1.5 yards of this, well, depending on your size, but I didn't use up to 1.5 yards. So to know how much to fold, you need to divide your hip measurement by 4 and add about 5 or 6 inches so that you can have enough allowance for your crotch extension and other allowances. So the length of my short is 17 inches, but I have extra 1.5 inches, half inch at the top to fold it in, and then 1 inch at the lower part to hem the short when I'm done. So now I have on the side, I have 2 inches, which is like my side starting allowance, and this is where all my horizontal measurements will be coming from, all the circumference measurements, and then from the top there, all my vertical measurements will be coming from the top. So the first line I'll go ahead to mark, starting from the starting line I drew there, the half inch from the top, I'm going to come down by my hip measurement, so my waist to hip, which is 8 inches. I'll just mark it down there and draw a line across. So the next measurement I would mark is my crotch depth line. So to get that, I divide my hip measurement by 4 inches, so it gives 10.25. Now to also get this, you can sit on a chair and take your measurement from your waist down to where your bum touches the chair. So whenever I do this and I compare the measurements with my hip divided by 4, it gives me exactly the same figure. So for this now, I'm going to be adding 1.75 to my 10.25, which is my crotch depth. I'll add 1.75 to it just to make up 12 inches. So you can add 2 inches, you can add 1 inch. I'm doing this because I want it to be free. I need some ease on the crotch area. So the next line will be my thigh line. My waist to the fullest part of my thigh is 14 inches. So I'm just going to mark 14 inches from there. It's usually maybe 3 inches below your crotch depth line. So the next line is the full length of the shorts, which is 17 inches, like I mentioned earlier. So I'll mark 17 inches there, and I have an extra inch for hemming, just to fold it in when I'm done. I'll just draw a straight line across there. And now to go over the lines again, I have my starting line at the top, I have my hip line, I have my crotch depth line, my thigh line, and the full length of the short, and an extra 1 inch to hem it in. So now to take the horizontal measurements, my circumference measurements, I'll be dividing my hip circumference by 4, which equals 10.25, and then I'll add an extra 1 inch to be 11.25, and I'll mark that on my hip line, on my crotch depth line, and on my waistline. So starting from the crotch depth line, I'll mark 11.25 rather. That 1 extra inch is for ease, just for a little allowance. So I'll mark it on the hip line as well, and then I'll mark it on the waistline. And I'm just going to draw a straight line across, connecting all the 3 points together, just like this. Now, I'm going to mark my crotch extension. So now to get my crotch extension, I would divide my hip circumference by 16. So 41 divided by 16 gives 2.5625. So I'll just approximate it to 2.6 inches. So there are various ways you can get your crotch extension. So some people divide by 20, divide by hip circumference by 20. Some people divide their thigh measurement into 2 and then mark it. So whatever works for you, please do well to practice and know the one that works best for you. So now I'm going to mark that 2.6 inches just there on the crotch depth line. Now from there, I'll go up by 1 inch just diagonally like that, and then I'll connect it with a slight curve from the crotch extension to meet that hip line point, just on the hip line right there. So I'll just use my free hand to connect this. You can use a curve ruler, but I'll just use my free hand. Now after doing this, to further connect it to the waist, on the waistline, you know, this part we're working on right now is the center front. So on this waistline, I'm going to go in by half an inch because I need this to sit very properly. It's just going to make it sit very properly on my body. So I'll go in by half an inch and I'll just connect that point to meet that hip line point where the crotch extension met the hip line. I'll just connect it further to the top, just like this. And now I will go ahead and take my waist measurement. So this is a free short, but only the waist part is going to be tight. Now before I take my entire waist measurement, I'm going to mark my dart. So my bust span divided by 2, which is 4 inches, I'll mark it there, and then I would come down by 5 inches. I'm just trying to make sure I have an accurate measurement, and then I'll connect it straight, and then I'll go out by 0.5 inches on the two sides of the line, and I'll just connect just like a regular dart. So I'll connect it this way, and then I'm going to take the rest of the measurements. So from the line I came in by ½ inch, I'm just going to place my tape there, and I will measure my waist measurement divided by 4, which is 8 inches. I'll just mark 8 inches down there, and then I'm going to replace the dart intake of 1 inch, so it will give me 9 inches, and then I'll add 1 extra inch for joining allowance. So I'm just going to be sewing this down on the two sides by half inch. So I'll add 1 inch to make up 10 inches, and then I'll just mark that point. Now on the hip line, because I said earlier I want this to be a very loose fit, I'm going to just add 1.5 inches to the hip line so that it can be wide enough, and then I'll just connect with a slight curve from my waist to meet the hip. So I have 1.5 inch allowance on the hip. So now I'm going on to work on the lower part of this short. I'll take the entire measurement I have on my crotch depth line, which is 14 inches, and then I'll divide that by 2, and I'll get 7 inches. So I'll mark that midpoint there, 7 inches. So I'll just mark the same midpoint on my thigh line, and I'll further mark that midpoint on the full length of the short. So I'm just going to draw a straight line across. So this line is a crease line. So this line is just a guide to be able to evenly distribute the measurements on the two sides, so that you don't have one side of the seam coming to the front. Everything is just evenly spread out. So I'm going to take my thigh circumference measurement divided by 2 and mark it on the two sides of this line. So my thigh divided by 2 is 12 inches. So that 12 inches, I'm going to evenly distribute it on these two lines. So I'll mark it on my thigh. So that's 6 inches on one side and 6 inches on the other side. I'm just going to mark it this way. So I marked it on my thigh line and on the full length of the short because I want it to be free. So now I'm just going to connect from the side, the midpoint there. I'll just connect it into the crotch, just like that, and then on the side I'm going to be replacing the 1.5 inches. I'm just going to be adding 1.5 inches for ease, just like I added to the hip line. So after marking the second 6 inches here, I'll just add 1.5 inches to this side. I hope you understand. So on the crotch line, I'm also adding 1.5 inches. On the thigh line and the full length, I'm adding 1.5 inches, and then I'll just connect it straight down, making sure I don't have any sharp points. So after doing this is it for the front of this short basically. So I'll just go ahead and cut it out. So now you can see that I did not add any allowance to this crotch area. I did not add 0.5 inch to sew it, because whenever I add allowance there, is still excess, so I still have to like sew by 1 inch again to take off some excess. So I prefer to leave it this way and just sew it. So I did not add any allowance. So if you're scared that there might be shortage, please go ahead and add 0.5 inches allowance around that crotch area, just so that you can be on a safer side. But I won't be doing that. I don't need that for me. So I'm just going to cut this out like this, and then I'll go ahead and cut out the back. So now for the back, I'm just going to place another fabric on a fold, but this time the fabric is going to be longer and wider than the front piece. So now on the side, on the crotch area, you need to have at least 3 inches, and then on the top you need to have 3 inches like in excess for the back, and on the side as well you need to have about 2 or 3 inches. Well, it depends on your size and the size of your bum. So I'm just going to place it, making sure the ends are aligned together, and then I'll begin taking my measurements. So now on the crotch line, I'm going to extend the back crotch by 2.6 inches, just like I extended the front crotch. So I'm just going to extend it further by 2.6 inches and mark it down there. On the thigh line, I'll go out by 2 inches. On the end of the short, I'm going to go out by 2 inches. You know, our back is bigger than the front, so all these extra measurements on the back is just so that it can accommodate our butts. So I'll just connect it straight from the lower part into the crotch extension on the back. Now on the hip line, I'm just going to go out by 2 inches as well and mark that point, and then I'm just going to connect it to the waist. But before I connect to the waist, I will go in on the waist by 1.5 inches, because you know our back is not straight. So I'm just going to go in by 1.5 inches so that it can sit properly on my back, and then I will further go up by 1 inch. So this 1 inch is to also accommodate the butt, so that when I sit, my short is not pulling down and showing my bum bum. So I'm just going to connect it straight upwards. So it depends on the size of your butt. You can go up by 2 inches at that point, that waist point. You can go up by 3 inches, even 4 inches. So I'll connect from that crotch area to my hip line, and then I'll just connect it to the new waist point I've just marked. So using my slight curve rule, I'm just going to connect all the points up just like this. Now after connecting the point on the mid back, I will go ahead and mark my waist circumference measurement. So placing my tape on that new waist point and slanting the tape, now the back waist is higher. The back is higher than the front. So I'm just going to slant it, and then I'll mark 10 inches. 10 inches is the full length of the waist I have marked here. You see, 10 inches is the full circumference rather. So I'll just slant it there from that top, making sure that it meets the side of the front waist, and then I'll mark 10 inches. But now I'm going to add ½ inch to this back waist, because I'm going to be fixing my zipper at the mid back. So I just need a little bit extra space for my zipper, just so that it doesn't get too tight around that area. So I'm just going to extend the back hip by 1 inch, and then on the thigh, on the crotch line, I'll also come out by 1 inch, and then on the thigh line 1 inch as well, the full length 1 inch. So I'm just doing this so that the back is bigger than the front, like I said, so that I can also have as much space, because I already have 1.5 inch in excess on the front, and the front is placed on the back. So I am just marking all that, and I'm going to cut everything out. Now on the crotch area of the back as well, the midpoint, I did not also add any allowance, because I don't need an allowance there. So you can add 0.5 inches there. I'm just going to be holding it down by maybe 0.5 inches or less. So I think it's just going to be in excess. Now I notched the dart point for the front and the back, and now I'm just going to go ahead and join the darts. So here I have joined the darts. This is the front piece, the front pieces. So now I'm just going to go ahead and trim off a little bit of the waist. So I didn't do this when I was cutting it out at first, because I wanted to hold the darts in place before I trim it off. So I'll go down on that midpoint by ½ an inch and connect it to somewhere in the middle of the short, and then I'm just going to trim it off like you're seeing me do here. So this is also just going to make it sit very properly and avoid the front being too high. So now for the back, I have also sewn down the darts for the back, and then to sew this midpoint of the back, I'll first of all come down by 9 inches, because like I said, I'll be fixing an invisible zipper on this back part, the midpoint. So I'll come down by 9 inches, and then I'll sew down the rest of the ends. So I won't be sewing the top, because that's where the zip would be. So this is the front. I've sewn down the front midpoint, and this is it open. See how the curve in front is looking. Now for the back as well, I've also gone ahead to sew down that point, and then I used some pins to secure the top in place, just so that it doesn't move around before I fix the zipper. So now I'll place them right sides facing, and then I'll go ahead and sew down the sides together. But before I do that, I'll make sure I take the measurements to know the exact measurements and know how much I'm going to be taking in for my zipper, just to confirm the measurements. So I'm just going to take it for the front, and then everything I have here is 17 inches, and my hip circumference divided by 2 is 16 inches. So it means that I'm going to be sewing it down by ½ inch on both sides, just like I already intended at first. So I'll take it to my machine now and just sew down the two sides by ½ an inch, just straight down from the waist down to the end. So now this is it after sewing down the sides. I also went ahead to iron open the seams, the side seams and the seams on the midpoint of the front and the back. So now the next thing to do is to sew down the crotch area. So I'll first of all pin down the sides, the midpoint of the front crotch and the back crotch, making sure that the midpoints are aligned together. I'll pin it down there, and then I will just pin the rest of the sides, and I'll just take it to my machine and just sew as shown, just like this. I'll just sew it this way. So now this is it after I was done sewing everything. I'm just going to turn it inside out just so that you can see how everything has come out. And now the next thing to do is to fold the top part inside. So I'm just going to cut out a bit of the fabric to use like an interfacing to turn in the waist part. So see how I placed it on a fold, just like a rectangle sort of. So I'm just going to place the waist part of the short on this folded triangle that I have done here with the other fabric, and then I'm just trying to measure my waist point and also include the zipper allowance I have there. So I folded it, making sure I have enough space to carry the entire width of this my shorts. Please just watch how I did it, and then you know the short is not straight, so I'm doing this so that I can get that entire curve. If I go ahead and just cut out a straight band to turn it in, it's not going to look nice when I put it on. It's going to be a bit tight around the waist area. So I'm just going to follow the curve of the waist, and I'll just extend it by maybe 1 inch on the both sides, and I'm just going to come down by 2 inches, just making sure that I am following the slant on the main shorts, the whole curve on the shorts. I'm just trying to make sure I can get those curves. So I'm just going to come down by 2 inches on one side and 2 inches on this other side, and then I'll take the shorts off, and I'm just going to continue marking that 2 inches from that new waist point down, just like this. I'll just keep marking 2 inches just so that I can get the entire curve all round. So you see, it is not straight, it is slightly slanted on the side, and the top part is very curvy. So I'm just going to mark that out properly and cut it off. I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not cutting a plain band because it's just going to be tight by the time I turn it in and I put it on. It's just going to tighten me on my waist area. So I'll just cut it out like this, and now I have 2 pieces because this was on a fold. So let's say one is for the front and the other is for the back. So I'm just going to pick one of them and just fold it, and then I'll cut it at the midpoint so that I can just still have that entire curve all around and in place. So I'll just place one side on this side and the other side and just join them together so that I can have just one straight piece. Now I'll just place it from the mid back where I have my zipper allowance. I'll just place it from there, and then I'll just pin it all the way around. I'm placing it right sides facing because I'll eventually turn it to the wrong side when I'm done sewing it. So I'll place it down, and then I've already sewn it at this point, and then I have a little excess there. I'll just trim it off, and I'm just going to turn it inside. You can notch it if you want, but this fabric is very light, so I will not be notching it. So I'll just bend it inside, that's to the wrong side of the short, and then I'll iron it properly, also using hemming gum to secure it down so it doesn't come out when I put it on. So I'll just use hemming gum to just secure this interfacing now. So this is it after I was done ironing. Everything has come out looking nice and very well pressed with the hemming gum. So the next thing is to fix my zipper. So I know this zipper is longer, I'm just going to shorten it, and yes, I am done. This is an invisible zipper I put here, so I'll just zip it up so you can see. This is how everything came out looking. I also went ahead to hem the lower part of the short, so I just went in once, and then I folded it once, and then I folded it again, just like this. So now this is it. This is how everything came out looking. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Please, if you found this video helpful, do well to give it a thumbs up, also share, and kindly subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And if you have any questions regarding this, please do well to leave it in the comment section, and I'll be happy to respond to it. Now this is how it came out looking on me. I also went ahead to pair it with this reversible waistcoat that I made a while back. I have the tutorial for this up on the channel. I'll leave the link in the description if you haven't seen it already. And now this is it. This is the end of this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in my next one. Bye.